Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneur's Inner Game podcast. Today I am delighted to welcome a very special guest, Nikki Vee. Nikki is a phenomenal success. She has had a really varied career. So she has a background which was in corporate world, and she enjoyed mega success as an MD of European Leisure PLC, responsible for a 70 million turnover and 3,000 staff. She's now become one of the UK's most successful executive coaches, working with companies such as Whitbread, Southwest Trains, and Sky TV. Her passion for sharing the art of coaching began with her early Coach the Coach programs, and then she went on to develop a unique coaching strategy. She's worked with many large companies to train and mentor HR and line managers to use master coach skills to enhance performance throughout the organization. Nikki, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
And thank you. It's been fantastic. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
You are so welcome. I think we're going to have a fantastic conversation about mindset.
Yes.
So could you please let us know how you became so successful? And I'd love you to focus on your mindset, your thinking along the way that brought you that success.
Do you know what, Nina, it's really interesting because I've just heard you obviously give my background and talk about all those years ago when I worked in corporate world. And I was actually in operations. I was an area manager and then a regional manager. And I was basically a manager of people. And even back then, I realized that there were people whose mindset was good, that you could add in the skills and the training and you could give them the opportunities and all those sorts of things. But if people's mindsets were not in the right place, you could give them all of that, but nothing will work. And so it was very early days. And the very first thing that I learnt about, which I was an operational manager in the nightclubs and clubs and bars organization. So it was very, cutthroat in a way. And I came across someone and they taught me about psychometrics. They taught me about the different personality styles. And one of the key things, which is why I share that with the coaches that I mentor, is I say, look, even before we've got into how we're going to coach them or mentor them or assist them with their mindset or with their philosophy or their beliefs or their, anything that we can assist them with, we have to understand that everybody's coming from a different space. They're coming from a different space because they're different personalities. They've had different programming, different cultures, different all sorts of things. But there is something that is very true for everybody. And that is that there will be fears and there will be motivators. There will be tendencies, there'll be characteristics that are true for a large group of people. And so when I learned about all the different personality styles, I realized that there are people who are towards, people who are away from, people who are risk takers, people who are risk averse. And when you really get to the bottom of what I call being an expert in human behavior, now you can start to make a business in this world called coaching. So even in the very early days, I recognized something. Was that when I really understood what was going on inside the inner game, what was this pattern of behavior causing, or pattern of emotion causing them to behave? Why were they not performing in their job or they're in their relationship or why were they not getting what they want in their goals? Well, it's going to be that they've got some fears, they've got some patterns of behavior that are preventing them from having any kind of chance of success and happiness. So I learned all about that. And then I started to realize that the time that I was one-on-one with people and that I could really ask them questions so that they had new realizations about what they've been doing that's prevented them, what they've been doing that's given them this experience, I recognized that what I was doing was coaching. And I mean, real coaching, not giving people advice. There's a place for that in mentoring. There's a place for that in strategy and training. But for me, pure coaching is understanding the psyche, understanding the inner game, as you said, and assisting somebody to be mega clear about that. And so when I learned that, I recognized my own inner game. I recognized my own motivators, but I recognized my fears. I realized that whilst I wanted to be, and had always been, I was theatrically trained when I left school. I left school very young. I was theatrically trained, and then I got into business, and I was always liking to be in the at the sharp end. I wanted to be in front of the customer and interacting. So I wanted that kind of recognition, if you like, but I realized I also had a fear of being rejected. I also realized I had a fear of failure. And of course, those fears made me behave in a certain way. So for example, I remember going for a more secure, safe job, right? Which is not really my personality style. I like variety and, a bit of risk and all that. And I noticed that I liked change, and I realized that many people don't. So, that many people don't like change. They're risk averse. They want the logic and the security. It's a very big need for them. So it always reminds me of the sort of old fashioned, just motivate people. And of course, if you try and motivate people, and it's the same for coaching, of course, if we try and encourage people to see it in a certain way, we're really only seeing it through our own filters. We're not seeing it through their filters. So if I, with my personality style, tries to encourage somebody who's very away from, risk averse, process orientated rather than, influential orientated or whatever, the mere fact of my body language gives away my style, of course. Somebody who's much more still, who's much more, their inner game is much quieter, they're much more serious. If I start saying to them, oh, you know what, you want to live a little, you want to take a few risks, of course, this for me, this is when I talk to coaches, I go, you see, the problem with this is it's not worth paying for. It's just something that we could just tell people. It's not finding out what's going on for them inside. So I learned this really, really early, but I learned about myself, and I realized that what was true for me and what was a belief for me was not the case for other people. And I found out that when I was one-on-one with them, that I started to find this out. And so I started to really understand them, understanding what was really going on inside of them. And I think that's what took me into coaching, really. I realized that was a great way. So we got taken over, and I left my corporate job, and I decided to start off as a coach, so I did all the things you're not supposed to do. I took my golden handshake money, they gave me a handshake to leave, spent it all on an office, and I had a brochure, and I had a telephone system where my secretary could put calls through, because I was so used to that in corporate life. So of course I sat there and nothing happened, didn't get any clients, had a little bit of work because I'm bright, I can go and network, and I had a little bit of work, and I did a bit of training. And then one day somebody, said to me, can I use your training room because it doesn't seem to be being used? And I realized that I wasn't really understanding what moves people towards you as a coach. It isn't you saying, I'm a coach, do you want to buy some coaching? I realized that even myself, my inner assumptions was that I could just set my stall out and everybody would come, and that's just not the case. It's a very intimate relationship that you have with your client, and therefore it has to be, it's not that you're selling, because I know, Nina, a lot of your clients and your members of your circle, as well as a lot of my community, we are enthusiastic to assist the world, make a difference, all those great things. And of course, we've got to get good at having these kind of, the sales conversations that you and I spoke about earlier. And so I suddenly realized that I had no idea what to do about that at all. And I was good at talking to people and asking them great questions, but I wasn't getting clients because I was just selling them what I thought they wanted. So I suppose the inner game, to really give you my perspective then, was that I went into not in such a good place. I realized that I knew how to assist people with a lot of different things, especially business at the time, as I was a corporate coach and executive coach. But I didn't really understand enough about people's fears, people's limitations, people's patterns, I suppose, of behavior. And, you know, I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate to have a very a positive impact from my parents, especially my dad, who's passed away now. And my dad had very, very strong positive beliefs about himself and about what he could achieve and what he, and I sort of, thank God, you know, I've got quite positive beliefs. But I realized that not everybody has had a childhood that I had, and some people have had a lot of what do they call, you know, what we call it, you know, that we come into this world as this bright shining diamond, and then all of a sudden we get layers and layers of negative, you know, beliefs and crap and experiences and significant emotional events. And I realized, and I was grateful, so grateful for the fact that, yes, of course, we've all had something that we call a significant emotional event. We all can benefit from being coached and being asked questions. But I realized that I had quite a positive mindset, but that many of the people that I dealt with didn't. And I thought, well, you know, what I need to do now is to really learn how to serve them massively at a very high level, which is why I then went to the States to be trained as a coach. And I suppose being trained as a coach is an interesting way of putting it, because I actually think it's being trained to understand human behavior, psychology, and the places that they go where, as we said earlier, quite honestly, whatever they do won't work because they're internally, well, not at their best. What else could you call it? You know, they're in a state or in a deeper kind of, in that kind of give up mode, that kind of, oh, you know, I've tried everything and nothing seems to be working, and affects all of your life, of course, when you're in that space. And I just really set out to learn as much as I could about that and how to assist them. And of course, so, you know, this is all about mindset and of course, it in doing that, which is why everybody, I think, that goes to coaching gets so much for themselves when they're learning how to coach. They get so much for themselves because they're realizing some of the stuff that they're doing completely unconsciously. And I realized I was doing a lot of stuff completely unconsciously that was causing me to have a okay life, but not the life that I could, and actually not living my purpose. You know,
so I'd love to pick you up on a couple of things.
Yeah,
you said that you had fears of rejection and fear of failure. How did you overcome those fears? Because those are probably two of the biggest fears, not just coaches, but anyone in all aspects of their lives have. How did you overcome that?
Yeah, interesting, because of course, as I said to you, that's the first thing I came across. And of course, we've got fear of failure, you know, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, and fear of conflict. Those are the four biggies that people really, you know, have. And how did I personally overcome that? I suppose, and this is what I believe about coaching as well, I believe that if I realized, which I did, and which is what I assist my clients with, and, you know, people that I train and coach, if I realize the detrimental impact of that fear. So first of all, it's not about just trying something to overcome it, because it's very deeply rooted. It's come probably from it. Sometimes I always go, it could be past lives, let alone this life, you know. And of course, every significant emotional event will reinforce it, because there's something about the psyche that says, even though it might not be exactly the same event, we make it a likeness to it. And some of us are more that frame of mind than others. But often what we'll do is we'll see ourselves as having the same experience. So I overcame it by realizing how significant it was. So it wasn't like, okay, I've got a fear of this, and, you know, let's, you know, there's that book, Fear the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's not my favorite book. title. I've never read the book, so I can't. Can you hear me okay?
You froze a little bit. We can
Yeah.
edit that bit out.
Saying that my internet was unstable. So tell me if it goes again, and I'll get onto a different internet thing.
Okay, I think it's if it's unsteady, it may carry on interrupting the interview. And we need obviously really good quality.
It just went off for a second. It just came off up in front of.
Let's carry on, because I can edit that bit out.
Okay. It seems okay. So let me just go back then, and then you can edit it easily. This fear that I had, I realized that it wasn't just about overcoming it, like feel the fear and do it anyway, because when I really understood the impact of that fear, that would floor me, it would cause me to be so incapable of movement, incapable of even reason, that I would avoid things and avoid doing things because that was there, So I started to realize that the impact of that fear is huge, it's significant, and that actually it's not real. And I suppose my understanding of the fact that I actually am safe. Now, this is a bit out there thinking, but I suppose a lot of the training that I had, with people like Louise Hay, Brandon Bayes, Tony Robbins, people like that, I just came across, and we're all saying the same thing, for goodness sake, which is that, if it stops us in our tracks, then we need to handle the particular memory. This is more like an NLP look at it. We need to, first of all, realize its impact, and then look at where it's originated from. And not to counsel it, be a therapist necessarily, but just to have a conscious realization of where it's come from. So I suppose, the truth is I did a lot of inner work with myself, going, where's that come from? Where's that belief come from? Where's that fear come from? Realizing the impact, and then really realizing that I'm safe, and that I suppose the biggie is I'm good enough, because I believe that at the bottom of everybody's fear is just I'm not good enough and I'm not lovable. You've probably heard that said before. And I think that when I thought that I wasn't good enough, because of some of my fears or some of my experiences where I'd taken on other people's beliefs, or just by being young and not that confident, I started to realize that I am good enough, and I'm good enough exactly as I am today.
And that's huge, isn't it? That's absolutely
massive.
What would you say to coaches, because you've worked with so many coaches over the years, and you've seen their fears, you've seen what stops them. What would you say to coaches to help them to get over their fears? What advice would you give them?
Well, all of the above, of course. Realizing that it will be the fear that will hold you back. The thing that I would say also, because again, you're probably hearing that I'm always about being conscious of what we're not conscious of. You see, having been in HR as well for a long time, I interviewed many people, and I could see the minute they walked in the door whether they were going to be right for our culture. They never even opened their mouths. And when I became HR director, I had this big budget to spend on coaching and training, right? And I used to think to myself, they come through that door and they're so nervous and so not believing in themselves that it gives me a problem, because I'm trying to find somebody that I can, I can recommend to my people as a coach or a trainer or whatever. And this person can't present themselves to me because what's going on in the inner game. So what I say to coaches is recognize that people buy unconsciously. Recognize that your inner fear, I know this is tough to take, will be written all over you. And that actually the biggest thing that people need in order to ask us to assist them with their innermost fears and problems is that they need to trust us. And therefore we have to show up in a way that doesn't have those that shows us as being, like out of our own way is the way I love to put it. It's like, okay, we're human. We're going to have off days. We're going to have like feelings. We're going to have things happen. But you see, we can't let that present itself when we've got a client in front of us or when we're presenting to an audience. We have to be out of our own heads, out of our own shit, out of our own way, and serve either the individual or the audience. That's a bigger ask than it sounds even, I think. That comes from maybe many, many months or maybe even longer of having all this great skill, but not being able to convert that into a business or into paying clients, not realizing that when we ask questions of coaching, because I believe coaching is about asking great questions, if we've got an agenda going on underneath, which is, will this person buy from me? God, I've got to pay the bills, whatever it is. If we just serve that person and just give our questions, not give advice, but just to give our questions without trying to get this person as a client, I believe that if we can be empty of our own stuff and just be not overconfident, just being certain in ourselves, then I think the person can taste it and feel it, and they will move towards that as the main thing, completely unconsciously.
Yes.
And so, I mean, in a nutshell, I call it how you show up, and we have to show up without this inner game going on, which is like trying or like in any way being pushy, or the opposite, which is giving it all for free. Like have free time with me, because then you'll get to sense of whether you're saying to see whether I'm good enough. And you've got to know you're good enough. You've got to have confidence in yourself as a coach, rather than trying to get your own certainty by the results that people get.
Yes, it's almost you need validation from the outside world, but we don't need validation from the outside
You're
world.
absolutely spot on, Nina. If you need validation by the results that people get, I'm not saying our job is not to help them get the best results we can, but we can only be responsible for our own state and energy and our own work. People will make choices. And I think that we have to validate ourselves. You've absolutely hit it on the head.
And what is the biggest problem? What stops some coaches from really making a really great living out of coaching? What's the difference between the coaches who just stay at a very small level? They're not happy. They know there's more, but they can't quite get there. What's the difference between them and the coaches who really, really attain a great lifestyle with their coaching?
Okay. All of
and
the
obviously we're talking about the inner game here.
All of the above, of course, without repeating it. I think nowadays as well, much more so than when I started, having a niche. I know people are going to go, oh, Nikki, not the bloody niche word. Yes, unfortunately, the niche word. I mean, one thing that it doesn't say in the bio that I sent over to you is I was a corporate coach, executive coach, going to companies. And then I met Tony. And Tony and I met 14 and a half years ago. And he was coaching entrepreneurs and I was coaching corporates. So we get together, blah, blah, blah. Within a month or two, people are asking us to present about our relationship. So we've had an intimate relationship coaching business for the last 14 or 15 years. And we literally got into it by accident. People asked us to talk about our relationship. Then people wanted to know if they could have private time with us. And within 40, we've done everything. We've done media, magazines, television. We've got videos. We've got the whole 9 yards. And it's only about 7 or 8 years ago that people started asking us to teach them the style of coaching we use. That master coach was born. But the learning I had from the intimate relationship thing was we got into that by accident completely. But what cost us, which is why it was a good business, but not a fantastic business, was because we weren't niche enough. So every video I made, I'd go, so you're either single and wanting to be in a relationship as a single man or a single woman, or you're in a relationship that's not where you want it to be. You're either this or that. Well, you see, nowadays, they switch off before they've got to that. I mean, they might like you, but they switch off. Whereas if it's like, I've got a single women's program called Let Him Find You. It says on that. I know, I love it, don't you? It's 4 words. It says everything, right? And it's let him find you. So that means it's for a woman, for a man to find her, right? And we've just got this whole online program with it. And it's so focused that there's no need for any explanation. And it's like that. And I believe that the people that I have mentored that have been the most successful, they're either in corporate and they specialize in a particular sector. I've even got people who are specializing in a particular role, you know, a particular title. I've got people who specialize in a particular part of the business that the businesses are struggling with. In the private market, I've got people, you know, specializing. When I say private market, I mean people in their private lives. I've got people specializing in particular relationship issues, particular addictions, particular sizes of businesses in particular sectors, you know, like relationships, parenting. I've got, you know, not just health and fitness and well-being, which is far too broad. This is like weight loss for women or fitness for the over 50s. You get what I mean? And you see, because the online presence is so important nowadays, even for corporate, people are going to Google you. You've got to have that people see if you're recommended. Of course, if you meet somebody socially networking, you've got the ability to influence them straight away. And you might be able to organize to meet them privately or whatever that is. Because I normally go, there's 4 steps. There's how you show up online or off. There's how you interact in that very first moment, either online or off. And then there's the conversion conversation, and then there's delivery. So there's that's my 4 steps. And what I think is most important here is that we recognize that those moments when somebody meets us at a networking event and they go home and they Google us, or of course now it's get on the bloody phone and it's, you know, straight away, or they're recommended to us, which of course is great. We're only 2.5 years into Master Coach in the format it's in, which of course is our client is other coaches, right? And I can honestly tell you that I think that it's only now that we do a 2-day certified training, and we do obviously research everything and we've got stats on everything. It's only now that we're finding that half of the people that are coming from referrals, right? Whereas in our relationship business, again, after a couple of years, nearly all the people that came were from referrals. But nowadays people are going to go Google you. They need to see that you do this for a living. So and I think it's very clear. This is what I do. These are the people I specialize in. This is you might have some testimonials. This is if you like my background or whatever it is. And I share with my clients, look, that has to be like somebody goes, oh, well, if you've got that problem, you need to speak to this person. They go on and it's a perfect fit. Now, the good thing is it doesn't mean you can't work with everybody. Of course you can. It just means that they see that you specialize in one thing particular. So I think niche is very important. I know that's so annoying to hear. And the other thing is what we've already said, is to show up as a professional. This is my expertise. And I've got not only great coaching questions, but I've got philosophy, strategies, things that I call that mentoring more, things that people could follow, things that people could read, things that people can watch. And therefore then private time with you or one-on-one time with you, they've already had some trainings, you know, mentoring and everything. You can then get right down to the bottom of their own individual needs. So I think that as I look at this successful people, it's a really good question, is that they're pros. This is what they do. This is what they get known for. That's what they get recommended for. and they don't keep changing it. They stick at it and they just grow their reputation. Now, some of the people that I come across, they go, "Oh, that's all right, Nikki, but what about when I'm first starting?" Because when it's your first client, as long as you show up and as long as you're honest and you go, "Actually, this is what I did before and this is what I'm now doing. And I am, this is my ability to what I can do. Let me show you." You'll get clients by just being that confident and certain. So niche, professionalism, and here's the thing, being willing to get out there and talk to people. Too many people nowadays want to hide behind a website, trying to get their leads through. And I'm not saying it's not good, because our business has grown by this. Facebook ads, you name it, whatever, LinkedIn, whatever. That will give you a steady stream of, good people coming through to you that you can then talk to. I think there's nothing that can compare to you going out and talking to people, even if you can't get to your niche. I mean, when I think about it, a couple of my clients are ex-HR like I am. So in the corporate world, they know that people are trying to get to see them all the time. And they said, but the good people found a way. And it's like when we were in the private sector with relationships, we just got out there speaking what I call time in the saddle, being willing. And if somebody, like I am with you today, somebody asked me to do an interview, I do an interview. I mean,
yes.
I'm not going, so how many people is this going to go to, Nina, and how will I get any clients from it? What we have to do is just go, look, this is what I do for a living. Cut me in half as the master coach, right?
Exactly.
And so, what else would I want to do on a Thursday afternoon but talk to your community? And I think that's what is the difference between the people who succeed and the people that don't. And I don't believe that everybody has to do it in the way that, I definitely don't think people have to do it in the way that a lot of people do, where they go, "Oh, like, you've got to be a great speaker," or, I'm theatrically trained, so I'm quite used to being on stage, as it were. So I'm good enough, I think, on stage and speaking. But if you're not that type of person, you could have a small group of people, people say, "Oh, there's no networking groups for, people in business in the local area." I said, "Well, start one then." Start one. I've got one client who gets all her clients from a local networking group that she, started herself. Like a business, like a breakfast.
Lots of ways. So, Nikki, how can our listeners find out more about you and your work?
Thank you very much for asking. That's very nice. And that's what people should do, is make sure it's easy to find out stuff about you. So if they go to, obviously in, www or whatever they call it nowadays, HTTPS or whatever it is, Master Coach, MasterCoach, that's all one word. And that's .training, mastercoach.training. If for any reason they can't find that, mastercoach.co is just another one of our websites.
Fantastic.
And that will send them into our landing page, which really just shares with them the sort of best way that people start off getting to know us more, deciding whether they like what we share and get to understand our strategies and more of what we've talked about today, is they come along to one of our trainings, which it's 2 days. We do them as weekends, and in the week we do them in Birmingham, in London, and they are a low cost way of understanding our philosophy, but B, getting some good strategies for those 4 steps.
Fantastic.
How you show up, how you interact with people, either at networking or online, videos, emails, how you have a conversion conversation. You see, that's the biggest. The third one is always the biggest one that stops people. Because so my kind of individual thing is that I share some great coaching questions that people can ask that doesn't feel like they're selling to them. It's just so that they ask them, so they get clear, so that people can buy from you. And then we do a little bit on the delivery, but of course everybody delivers a lot of different stuff.
Yes.
And that's the first step for most people.
fantastic. Thank you.
I'd love
Thank you
to
for sharing that.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
thank you for being on this call with us and sharing your wisdom, your gems. It's been absolutely fantastic. And
Thank
for
you.
everyone who's been listening in, thank you so much for joining us today. And please do join me again soon. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.